Reeve, principal of Vanderveer Elementary School.
And I'm Dr. Tian, superintendent of schools.
We are so excited to welcome everyone to our Vanderveer Evening Learning Academy.
You are all in for weeks and weeks of enjoyment.
You will be learning alongside your very own Vanderveer teachers.
Also, we have teachers and administrators from across the district that will be bringing you fun learning experiences.
You will become scientists, engineers, mathematicians, writers, world explorers, and learn to communicate in different languages as you explore concepts in math, reading, writing, science, social studies, world language, and so many more.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we encourage you to visit often and view other lessons in our learning library as we add to the videos each week. Enjoy!
Hello, Somerville students. I'm Mrs. Kolup, and I am a STEM and 8th grade science teacher at Somerville Middle School. I am so excited to be here with you right now to teach, learn, and build your own hydroponics garden at home. Now, if you don't have all of the materials necessary for this project, that's okay. You can simply watch and learn about hydroponics, or you can get the materials at another time and rewatch this video as it will be available to you after tonight. I can't wait to get started, so let's begin. Today's activity is a STEM activity. What is STEM? What do the letters in STEM stand for? That's right. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And this project is going to incorporate all 4 of those things. During this video, I'm going to explain to you the science, the technology, the engineering, and the math behind the projects, and hopefully you can make connections to other things that you have done before, or maybe you can make connections in the future to this activity and how the things you do might also relate to STEM. Our goals for today is to design, build, and test our own hydroponic garden and to explain what plants need to grow. So are you ready, my young scientists and engineers? Before we begin, let's see what we already know. I know you've got a lot of knowledge in that smart brain of yours. My first question is, what do plants need to grow? You might have said sun, water, soil, air, or other things related to plants. My next question is, what is hydroponics? What other words have you heard with hydro before? Hydro is a root word that means water. So you may have heard of terms before like hydrate, where you are putting water into your body. You may hear dehydrate, which is removing water. You might have heard of hydrant, which is a pipe by your street that has water that firefighters use to put out fires. And you might have also heard of hydrangeas, which are big, beautiful flowers that use a lot of water to grow. For science, we are going to learn about what plants need to grow. So some of your answers before might have been sunlight, water, soil, and air. Plants definitely cannot live without water or air. Energy from the sunlight allows plants to make their own food, and the energy helps turn water and carbon dioxide from the air into oxygen and sugar. Soil does not provide most of the material for plant growth, though, although it can hold water for plants to use as well as some nutrients. It also helps keep the roots stable. Technology. We are learning about the wicking hydroponic system. Now, our hydroponic hydroponic system is not going to necessarily look exactly like this picture, but that's okay. We're going to make a smaller version. So you'll notice here that we've got a tray, and that is where our plants are sitting, and there is some material here in which the plants will grow. Then the bottom part is a reservoir full of water. There's an air stone, some self-watering wicks, an air line, and an air pump, and that goes into the stone. So hydroponics is a type of gardening that relies on water filled with nutrients to grow plants. Soil is actually substituted with other materials to support the roots of the plant. So for today's activity, if you have soil and that's the only material that you have to use for your plants to grow in, that's fine. However, I'm going to be showing you some other options that you can use to make it more of a true hydroponic garden. If you've ever been to Epcot and Disney World, you may have been on the ride Living with the Land. During this ride, you can see all of the different gardens that Walt Disney World uses to grow plants, fruits, vegetables, and flowers for the parks. Their gardens and greenhouses use a ton of different types of hydroponic systems. They don't use soil, they use other materials instead. Our hydroponic gardens are not going to be this big, but they're going to work in a similar way. The engineering aspect of this project is us designing, building, and testing our very own small hydroponic garden. We'll need to problem solve, try different solutions, and improve our designs as we build. Here are some examples of what our gardens might look like. But again, you might not have some of the same materials that I do, and that's okay. We'll find some substitutions, and we'll make sure that we have everything we need to do this. The mathematics part of this project will incorporate us taking measurements of our plant as it grows throughout the next few weeks, seeing how many leaves there are, and so on. You can also use a calendar to help you keep track, and a ruler could be a tool that you use to measure the height of your plant. Here we have the engineering design process. So our first step is to define the problem. Well, our problem is, if we can, we would like to try to grow a plant without the use of soil. Again, if you only have soil to use, that's okay, I promise. Our constraints that we are going to identify are things that might get in our way as we do this. So we might be limited to what kind of supplies that we have, what materials are available to us, if we have an adult helper to help us right now, things like that. It could also be what kind of plant you want, or if you have seeds versus a plant that's already partially grown. For our brainstorming, we're going to do some thinking out loud and try to solve some problems that might come up as we go. So be ready to put your thinking caps on. We're going to select the most promising solution that works well for us. We're going to make a prototype of our solution. And so this might not necessarily be the final version by what we come up with at the end of the video. We might need to tweak it. Maybe we can make another one when we're done and learn from our mistakes or from anything that might have come up this time around. And then we are going to test our prototype. We'll let our garden grow for a few weeks and we'll see what happens. Iterating is doing this process over again and going back, rebuilding and repeating some steps to get out those little issues that might come up. And so there might be changes that we want to make. And if we have enough supplies, like I said, maybe you can make another more improved version of your prototype and then communicate the results. Not only do I want you to share your results with your family, but share them with your friends, your teachers, and even me, Mrs. Kolop. I'll give you some information at the end of the video in case you want to share with me what you created. So, before we continue, you must have the help of a trusted adult to make your own hydroponic garden. There are a lot of different materials that we can use for this project. However, your safety comes first. So if at this time you don't have a trusted adult right next to you who's going to help you out and you want to make your garden right now, pause this video, go get a trusted adult and see if they can help you. If they can't help you right now, remember you can always watch this video at another time and they can help you then. I want you to be successful, but most importantly, I want you to be safe. So please, please, please make sure that you have a trusted adult with you during this project. So, if you got your trusted adult, let's get building. Here are some of the building materials that you can use. And like I mentioned a couple of times already, you can use some materials that might substitute for something else if you don't have what's listed here. We're going to be problem solvers today, and we're going to make this work. So a clean, empty plastic bottle or a container with a hole in the bottom and another container that is slightly bigger is one of the first things you'll need. You're going to need something to support the roots like cotton balls, water beads or marbles, river stones, lightweight expanded clay aggregate, coconut fibers, perlite, or like I said, if you have soil, you can use soil for this. You might also need scissors, an X-Acto knife, again that is only for your trusted adult who's helping you out, and possibly a hole punch. You're going to need yarn or a strip of cotton material from maybe an old t-shirt like I will be using. You need seeds or a small plant, water, and gloves so that you don't get too messy. I suggest possibly making this project at a table with something underneath your supplies, or if you want to do it outside on a nice day, then you definitely can do that. All right, my friends, I have a clean workstation here to work on. I'm just using a table. Here is an example of what your hydroponic system could possibly look like. You can see cotton balls on the top of my system here with 2 seeds ready to grow, and I have a strip of cotton material here that is going to serve as my wick. I just cut it from an old t-shirt that I had. I also have tape along the edges to add decoration and to also protect me from any sharp edges that there may be. And the bottom part of my system has my water. The water will travel up our wick to the roots, and we want to make sure that we don't fill the bottom part up to the very top with water. We just want the bottom portion, maybe about a quarter of the way full of water. Notice that our system sits nicely on top of each other. Today I'm going to use a plastic water bottle that I rinsed out, took the label off. If you don't have a bottle to use, you can use a container that already has some holes in the bottom for you, just like this one here. It has 6 holes. If you don't have 6 holes, that's absolutely fine. The number of holes doesn't really matter as long as there's at least 1. If a family member has been gardening recently, they might have a container with holes in the bottom like this, ready to go. We want to put this on top of another container that is going to have the water in it so that it goes up the wick into the top portion of our system. We don't want it sitting directly in the water. We want to make sure it sits on top so that the wick gets the water. So that is something you could use as well. I am also going to be using strips of cotton material from a t-shirt like I mentioned before, but if you don't have something like that, you can use some yarn instead. You can get creative. I'm also using scissors and a razor blade or X-Acto knife, and that is only for your adult to use. You can use cotton balls. You can also use soil if you have it, even though hydroponic systems typically don't use soil, and you can also use water beads. Here are my seeds, but if you have a small plant with a nice root system, you can use that as well. So I'm going to show you a bottle that has already been cut. Take a look at where the tape is to see where I made my cut around the bottle. And I want you to notice the difference between the top and bottom portions. Take a look at their size. This top portion has some tape along the edges, just like I mentioned before. So does the bottom. But you can see the bottom is a lot taller than the top. That's because we want this top portion to sit nicely in the bottom where there is room in the bottom for water, so that the water doesn't go all the way to the cap. We want to make sure that it's not sitting directly in water, that it's above it. So we want to be careful with how much water we put in here. So again, take a look at where I made my cut so that when you go to cut your bottle, you have about the same size that I do. So you could take a look at what the halfway mark is and go a little bit up from there, or you can use a ruler to measure. So here I have my water bottle, and again I'm going to find a halfway point. I can also use this line or groove that was where the label was as a good point to guide my blade. So this is where your adult is going to come into play. They are going to do this step for you. Here is my razor or my X-Acto knife that I'm going to use to cut my bottle. Now we don't want to let our bottle loose, but notice the sharp edge of our blade. I don't want that to get close to my fingers that are holding my bottle. I just want it to be far enough away where I can safely cut. I also don't want to cut towards myself, or I don't want to cut towards anyone else. I want to cut away from myself and others so that everyone is safe here. I want to make sure, again, that I'm holding this bottle carefully, that my fingers are not too close to my blade. And I'm going to start by putting a small hole in the size of my bottle. I'm going to very carefully make small movements so that I can make a nice slit in the side of the bottle, just big enough for me to eventually put some scissors in to cut the rest of the way around. I'm going to make sure I close this back up so that it's not exposed. I'm going to get my scissors. I'm going to very carefully insert them into the slit and cut around the bottle. And all I'm doing is simply rotating the bottle with my hand. Again, I'm still keeping it against the table so I have something supporting it. And I'm not making too many big motions with my scissors. I'm just cutting all the way around. When your bottle is cut in half and put into pieces, what you can do is pick out some tape and wrap it around those edges. Just make sure that you have enough space in the bottom of the bottle for your water. You can decorate your bottle. Just make sure that you use things that are approved by your loved ones. And now that I have my tape wrapped around this edge here, I can put it against my table. I'm going to secure my cap. I'm going to use my hand to hold this top portion against the table nice and secure. I'm going to use my razor blade again to cut a hole in the top of my bottle cap by simply pushing the tip of it in the middle of my cap and then making small rotations with my hand. So I'm just rotating the bottle, but my hand is very securely holding that razor. It's staying in the middle, and you can see that the plastic is starting to come off. It might depend on the thickness of your bottle cap with how easy this step may be. Just please make sure you are careful. Make sure that a trusted adult is doing this part. And if your trusted adult has a better tool to use for this, just make sure that they are safe. Safety is our first priority here. Your hole does not have to be perfect, it just has to be big enough to get a wick through the cap. I'm going to make sure I close up my X-Acto knife or my razor blade. I'm going to put my scissors away. Now I have 2 bottles ready to go, and my next step is putting my wick into my system. Now, what other things do you think you can use besides a t-shirt or yarn? Look at the size of the holes in the cap. Think about what could reach the top and the bottom. Now I'm going to show you 2 ways that you can insert your wick into your hydroponic system. The first way is going to be by twisting one end of your material or your wick and then carefully inserting it into the hole of the cap with the cap still on the bottle. Once part of the wick is in the hole, I'm going to pull it through so that half of the wick is in the top and half is sticking out. So I'm going to carefully pull, and now I have half the wick out and half the wick in. If you want, you can tie a knot in your wick so that it doesn't fall through the hole if you think your hole might be too big or if you think your wick is too thin. I'm going to place that in here, and now I'm going to take the cap off of this top. I'm going to twist the material again, and then I'm going to thread it through the hole, pull it so that half of the material is sticking out of one end and the other half is sticking out the other end. Just like that. I'm going to carefully put this cap back on the top of my bottle. Make sure it's nice and secure. And now that one is ready to go. Which method did you prefer? If you're using a container that already has holes in it, just like this one, you can use yarn tied together in a knot so that it doesn't fall through, or you can cut thinner pieces of this material. Just make sure that whatever you use, you are going to have enough material on the top to reach your roots, and you'll have enough material on the bottom that will sit in the water. So if I have a water put in the container like that, the wick will reach. Now we're going to fill the bottom of the container about 1/4 of the way with water. And we'll put our wicks in, and they will start to become saturated or fill up with water and travel up to our roots. I'm going to put some water beads or marbles in one, making sure the wick is in the middle. And now I'm going to put in some soil in my second one. Again, making sure the wick is in the middle. You might need to adjust it, and if you make a mess, just make sure you clean up. Now that I have my 2 different materials in here, I'm going to take my seeds and very carefully put them in the top of my hydroponic system. I'm going to just gently push my seeds down into my soil. With my cotton, I just place them on top of the cotton balls. And then I want to make sure again my wick's in the middle so that it reaches both seeds. And then I'll put my seeds in my water, marbles, or beads. I don't want them to fall down into the bottom of my top portion. I just want them to sit nicely on the top. I'm going to just put a few drops on the top to make sure that the seeds get some water for this first day of being planted, just in case our wick isn't fully saturated yet. So we got our water beads in one, we've got our soil in another, and then our first example had our cotton balls. So my friends, we did it. We made 3 different types of hydroponic gardens. We have our hydroponic garden using cotton balls, our hydroponic garden using water beads, and our hydroponic garden with our soil. So as a recap, my friends, this STEM project incorporated all 4 parts of STEM. We learned about the science of plants. We know that they need water and air to grow. Even though we did put soil in one of our hydroponic gardens, we're going to learn soon how plants don't necessarily need soil to grow. They also need sunlight, and so we are going to put these in a spot that gets enough sunlight for the plant. The technology portion of this project was learning about hydroponics to begin with. So we learned that hydroponic gardening is gardening without soil and using some other type of medium to support our root system. We know that we definitely need water, and our cotton material here, or if you used yarn, is going to act as a wick, and it's going to use something called capillary action, where the water is going to travel up through the wick, and it is going to support our plant by giving it water to the roots. We also learned about engineering. We had to use our thinking caps and problem solve. We had to think about what materials we had available to us, who we could work with, and we had to build. Now we are testing our hydroponic gardens now, and then in the future, if you notice you need to change up one of the aspects of your garden, then you definitely can. Something that I want to keep in mind is that, again, you want to change up your water every so often. Maybe you want to give it a gentle swirl so that it's not just sitting there still. And you might want to change out your wick depending on whether or not it starts to get a little bit icky. We are also using math because we are going to track the growth of these plants. We're going to see how much it grows, how much time it takes to grow, and we can also measure the height, how much water is being used. We can measure the number of leaves on our plant depending on what it is, and even maybe how many roots, if you can see the roots in your garden. There are so many different things that you can do. What I'm going to do is take pictures of my plant's growth, and I'm going to post them on my Twitter account. You can follow me on Twitter at STEM in the Ville, and I will definitely share my pictures for this hydroponics activity. What I want you to do is I want you to also send me a picture of your hydroponic gardens. You can send me an email at kkolop@somervilleschools.org, or you can send me a picture on Twitter. I can't wait to see what you designed and what you made. I can't wait to see how you made your hydroponic garden your own. Maybe you'll add a little gnome friend to yours, or maybe you might decorate your bottle. Maybe you'll get fancy and have different sizes too. Whatever it is that you choose to do is up to you and your trusted adult, but I'm just so glad I had this opportunity to learn, teach, and build with you. You can always rewatch this video if you need to. Enjoy the rest of your day, my Somerville friends.